Ukraine did a deep strike into Russia. Pretty crazy stuff. Took what, like a year and a half of planning. They created like specially designed trucks to hold a bunch of drones, and then through some convoluted operation, they got Russian drivers to have to bring them over and stop near this big old submarine and air base. And with these drones, they up and destroyed a significant portion of Russia's bomber fleet. But no, they destroyed some, what was it, like 1/3 of the bomber fleet? Destroyed Tu-95, 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 Tu-95. Insane. I'm trying to find, there was this one image that I remember seeing, this one specific image that showed the planes on the runway afterwards and all the damage they had taken, like all the holes in them. And those Tu-95s aren't made anymore, irreplaceable. Yeah. Real huge. Hold on, let me get like a total list of losses. Will this tell me? 4 Tu-95s destroyed, 1 damaged, 1 AN-22 destroyed. 3 Tu-95s destroyed, 1 Tu-95 damaged, 4 Tu-22 M3s destroyed. Sheesh. Well, according to this tweet, it's 16. That's a list. That is true. That is a list. These are significant numbers. Yeah, planes are expensive, man. The A-50 is a huge deal because there's only like 4 of them in existence. How often does Russia even deploy these expensive vehicles to the front lines? Like how often does it actually risk them? They use these to launch cruise missiles at cities. Wiki says 40 plus airplanes destroyed. A bunch of smaller ones, I imagine. According to the Financial Times, the damaged and destroyed aircraft made up around 20% of Russia's operational long-range aviation fleet. Many of the aircraft types affected, like the Tu-95, have not been produced since the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Wall Street Journal columnist Bernard Henry Levy compared the operation to Israel's Patriot attacks on Hezbollah fighters. You mean the one that killed a bunch of civilians? Fascinating. The cruise missiles that these planes are used to fire into Ukraine, is there like some requirement that these cruise missiles can't be fired from the ground? Like they need to have kind of a running start? Be up in the air, already be at a high speed? Okay, that makes sense. TASS reported that a truck driver alleged to be involved in the attack was questioned by the police. The defense ministry said there were no casualties in the attacks they admitted. One driver interviewed by Russian state news agency says he and other drivers were surprised by the emerging drones and tried to knock them down by throwing stones. It doesn't mention that they killed any driver here. Was that just speculation? You're telling me chat would give me misinformation? The Russian Ministry of Defense referred to the operation as a terrorist attack. Terrorist attacks are when you declare war on a country and then they use their military to attack a purely military target. I think for me, one of the most impressive features of this attack, or I guess the thing that I appreciate the most, is the fact that Zelensky pretty much immediately went to social media and started bragging about it. Like they didn't, because they understand how the propaganda machine works, right, from Russia. So immediately after pulling this off, like a second afterwards, he was like, yep, all right, everyone gather around, let's brag. Yeah, you need to own it, which I like, I guess. I like that element of transparency. The info would have gotten out anyway, but it's pretty cool. This after Trump and J.D. Vance telling Zelensky that he holds no cards. Europe, together with America, has better weapons than Russia. We also have stronger tactical options. Our Operation Spiderweb yesterday proved that. Russia must feel what its losses mean. This is what will push it towards diplomacy. Didn't they get Ukraine to sign over mineral rights? We talked about that deal, but it's complicated. I think that deal benefits Ukraine. I don't think it's bad for Ukraine at all. This war is unwinnable for Russia. I think that's true. I think that's probably true, yeah. If this war kept on grinding on as it is right now, I think that eventually Ukraine would win. It's just a matter of 1, nukes, and 2, how much suffering it would take to get to that point. As long as Ukraine continues to get support, maybe. Ukraine has shown weak points in the front lines. I mean, how long has it been since Russia made any real, like, territorial gains into Ukraine? Front lines have pretty much held steady. No, they make gains. Real gains. Come on. Yeah, people, you fight over 5 feet of land or whatever. The lines have held pretty consistent. I mean, we can do the thing again, right? We see where the lines are now. So go back 1 year. Yeah, they got this chunk right here. If we go back a year before that, it seems like once mines are thrown out, you're just kind of... I just wonder if it's going to push Russia to muster again. Here's the portrait of the leader of Operation Spiderweb. He looks really funny. He's like Gru in real life. Stuff like this reminds me how much we've forgotten. Okay, this is very funny. This is the head of Ukraine's security service. This is, remember how the other day I said that the new president of Poland, the one who won the other day, doesn't look Polish enough? This is exactly what the fuck I mean, okay? You need to represent your national and ethnic pride. You need to have a guy who just looks like a racist stereotype in government. Look at this unit, dude. He's got the kinds of titties that like Fujoshis draw. Jesus Christ. Is he like 4 feet tall? Incredible. What does a Polish look like? Not far off from this, in my mind. Putin has an 88% approval rating right now? Well, yeah, of course. Well, I mean, what else would you expect? It's an authoritarian state where, like, even the polling that they conduct is heavily biased in the way that they conduct it. Like, it's like with Assad, right? Yeah, like I'm not saying that he isn't widely supported by his population, but the population of Russia is literally, like, walled off from the rest of the world. Not in the same sense that like the Chinese population is, but they like, it's all state media, all very, very directed, targeted stuff. Also, you can't like publicly express that much disagreement, right? I think he's smiling. He's clearly smiling here. Either way, happy for them. Say something about the dog. The dog and the guy look the same. That's what I have to say about them. They're both kind of like doing the same mean mugging like dogs and owners do. True. This video perfectly summarizes the situation for Russian civilians. Where is this conducted? A lot of Russia's population is like so deep rural. Do you think that the pollsters get to them? Like when they're like asking people, do you support the war effort? Do you support Putin? Are they just asking people in like Moscow and St. Petersburg and stuff?
В центре Петербурга. Это душа России, душа России. Душа России. Посмотрите в эту душу России. Давайте посмотрим, что в этой душе. Живописнейшая архитектура 18 века. Прекраснейший пейзаж. Сними флаг России. Какой Путин, друзья? Какой Путин?
Oh, that's funny. The average Russian is extremely depoliticized. They usually answer along the lines of, oh, I don't talk about politics. Well, Russia never had a civil society. It never got to develop one. Lenin never built a workers' democracy, and Stalin sure as didn't, and the Russian Federation sure as hasn't. Like the people of Russia have literally never had a period of time during which like there could be internal, robust debate and meaningful democratic engagement with the government. They've never had like that's literally never happened there. At least in former Soviet territories, right? Like, Hungary or Ukraine or whatever, like there was a civil society there built around resistance to Soviet occupation. Like there was Poland, there was like a contrast there where a lot of the kind of marshaled energy in those regions was like, well, at least, I don't engage much with politics because what's the point? But at least you push back against this. Not entirely true. During the 90s, there was some civic society. I mean, it's a broad statement. Obviously, all people have some element of civil society. It's how we exist, like interpersonally as a social species. But I'm talking about like broad tendencies, like an example of a society that has a very, very, very robust civil society, even when their government isn't that like democratic, would be France. We make fun of the French for it. Like the French have a really, really robust sense of like, well, we should go out there and do this or protest or whatever. We should be like angry about this. They have a cultural tendency towards it. I would argue that to a large extent that's the case with many countries that currently don't get a chance to express it. For example, Iran. My impression of Iranians is that a lot of them really resent the regime because they didn't want to be ruled by like Islamists after the Iranian Revolution, and they still kind of like have that seed of dissent within them, but they don't get to express it, of course, because of where they live. You get me, right? Georgia, the country, not the state. Another great example, Greece. I would say that like the occupation of Greece during World War II, the like partisans fighting against the Nazis and like the communists in Greece who were kind of like crushed. You know what I mean, right? Anyway, I don't think Russia has much of that, and it's kind of like a special sauce, culturally speaking. Opposition to the military dictatorship in Greece was formative for current Greek civil society. And I would argue that right now America has a pretty bad civil society. I think that American civil society was probably at its most robust, probably between like, I don't know, 1890 and 1930s or 40s. The big wave of like union engagement, right? Maybe up to the 60s. Maybe you could extend that up to the 60s. There was very clearly a period of time, like beginning at some point during the big like Gilded Age labor movements, and the Great Depression. You have the first feminist movement, and you have like these like massive waves of Italian Irish immigration, and like New York City is like this big hotbed for political activism. And then you run into World War II, and it's people very, very engaged. And it carried forward at least to a point to the 60s. But at some point since then, maybe since Watergate, I don't know, people like their cynicism has just, people's interest in participating in societies kind of dwindled. I think in direct proportion with the construction of the suburbs, because the American dream, like the dream of an Italian grandpa, as I understand it, I've never talked to one, is to live in a 600 square foot house in a villa that like overlooks the Mediterranean and to eat tasty food and get fat. I think that's like the dream. It's a lovely dream for like an Italian grandpa. And for an American family, it's like a white picket fence in the suburbs where you don't have to be around loud minorities. And I think that the former is much more socially oriented than the latter. So the American dream, in a sense, is to distance yourself from civil society. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? Like it seems like we've chosen alienation as like an ideal end goal. Like the point is to have your own house. So in an environment where that's what you idealize, I think it kind of makes sense that we would be a little we're seeing the consequences of this now to an extent. Part of the reason France is such a strong civil society is they have an extremely elitist political system, which means you need other outlets for social tension. That makes sense. Also, I think that in a good functioning democracy, people should more or less kind of like hate their government, you know? Like, I think that much in the same way that I think that a stream environment is at its best when I'm antagonistic to you and you're antagonistic to me, there's a kind of like mutual contempt, like a mutual, what are we doing here? Like to me, you guys are unemployed, contrarian, lazy who sit around and criticize me with all my great points, and to you, I'm an entitled, ungrateful, egomaniac live streamer who just likes sitting here and like listening to the sound of his own voice. Like I think that's a good, I think this is a good rapport, right? And caught for me too, caught both ways, okay? Caught, like I think that works. And I think likewise, like the role in a democracy, the constituency, right? The voters should be like, all right, mother, you promise you're going to do this, go out there and do it, and we're going to nibble at your ankles the whole time. And the politician is like these grumbly, whiny workers. They have no idea how hard it is to be up here. I can't get half the shit I promised done. And there's this like mutual contempt that still, of course, represents the wishes of the people, but is, I think, in my opinion, indicative of like a good attitude towards power, right? Like, even if you are working at a job where you have a great boss, right? Like you work at a small place and your boss or manager is just a cool person who is as good as they really can be to you. They give you a lot of leeway. You know, it's easy. They find people if you're sick or whatever. Like they do what they can. You shouldn't take that and be like, I love bosses. When bosses are done well, everything works fine. You should, in your mind, you should be like, well, like every day you're called into work, even when the boss has done nothing wrong to you, you should be like, but then you go there and like have a good time. The griping is an essential component. Are you describing incentives for engaging with Hegelian dialectics? I mean, kind of, a little bit. Otherwise, you get into like fascist collaborationist messaging with regards to class and social divides, and I think that's bullshit. Well, it depends on the social divide, right? Between politician and worker, there should be antagonism. Between black and white, there shouldn't be, I mean, obviously, unless it's a funny joke.